Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 99, it's a Crown Vic. The car may look familiar to some of you. This car was here a couple of weeks ago for an ABS issue with the left rear ABS sensor. At that time when I drove the car, I did mention to the customer that they need to replace the brakes, the front brakes in particular, because when you drive this vehicle and you step on the brake, the steering wheel rocks like crazy and your foot moves up and down on the brake pedal pretty quickly. So I know that the rotors are in very poor condition and in need of replacement. So today he brought the car back. We're going to pull the wheels off. We're going to take a peek up front. We're going to see what it looks like, and we're going to wrap this job up, and hopefully it'll take us about an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's out the door. So all right, let's pull the wheels off and see what we're dealing with. As you can hear, this car has got an alarm on it. All right, let's get up there and take a look and see what we're dealing with. Helps if we have a light in here. All right, as you can see, they're pretty rusty, and they're actually blue, so we can tell that this has a lot of hard braking on this particular vehicle. So we are going to change the rotors. We're not going to resurface them or anything, because there is quite a bit of rust here anyway. As far as the thickness of the brake pads, they're somewhat decent, but we'll take it off and see what it looks like. Before we do anything, we're going to actually check to make sure that the calipers slide the way they're supposed to. So, all right, let's get some tools, and we're going to check it out. We'll see what we need, and we'll place that order. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in the back. We usually get in here and we pry these brake pads back in place. This one may be a little difficult. I'm going to try it and see. But down inside here, there's a anti-rattle clips that actually are in there, making it difficult to get in there and pry it. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to try it, but we'll see how it goes. All right, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take out this bolt here. It feels like it's probably a 13 or a 14 millimeter. There's also two bolts back in here, one here and one down the bottom underneath here, which is to remove the mounting bracket itself, to take the mounting bracket off. Once we have this off to the side, we're going to hang it with the hanger out of the way, and then we're going to take this rotor off the car. So let me give you an example of what kind of tools you're going to need, and then we're going to proceed and get this job done. Okay, this is what you're going to need. You're going to need a hammer, pry bar, a ratchet, whether it's a swivel head or if it's a straight head, whichever you prefer. I'm probably going to use the swivel. I'm used to using that. A set of sockets, but like I said, we're probably going to use just the 18 millimeter and probably the 13 millimeter here. A very large screwdriver to possibly push those pistons back in, and if not, we're going to use a tool like this to recess those pistons back into the bore, and of course a pry bar and a hammer to beat that rotor off, because it looks like it's going to be pretty rusty on there. And of course we're going to need some synthetic brake grease when we put this job back together, and our hanger to support the caliper while it's hanging on the car. All right, so all right, let's get started and see how it goes. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to push that piston back inside here. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but we'll give it a try and we'll see. We're not going to be able to push it back in, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull that caliper off first, so we can get started and see how those slide pins are. Like I said, the caliper hold down bolts are probably 13 millimeter, so we're just going to break them loose. And then we'll take them out. Don't lose these because you're going to need to put these back in. All right, then we're going to take the caliper off the car. If it's a little tight, you can get in here with a screwdriver and just pry it up like this. That alarm system's going to drive me crazy today, I think. All right, now, very important part of this job here is we have to make sure that these pistons push back in, but we also have to make sure that these slide pins right here slide the way they're supposed to. As you can see, this one slides in and out, and this one also slides in and out here too. So the caliper hardware or the slide pins are in good condition, so we're just going to lubricate them and put them back on. We are going to replace the hardware kit which holds the brake pads into the mounting bracket. All right, so we're going to put a brake pad in here, and we're going to put a brake pad in here, and now we're going to push this piston back in to make sure that it pushes back into the bore all the way. And I can tell already just by the way it's pushing that these pistons are going right back in. It shouldn't be an issue. As you're pushing these pistons in, be aware that sometimes you'll start leaking brake fluid, especially if the fluid was overfilled in the master cylinder, it may start to leak a little bit. And you can see those pistons are pushing right back in just the way they're supposed to. Okay, so now after that we can take our tool back off. Now whether you use this tool or any other kind of tool, it doesn't really matter as long as it gets the job done. A lot of people use a C-clamp, which is acceptable also. Now these shoes, of course, we're not going to use these are trash. And remember I said we're going to take this caliper, we're going to take a piece of hanger or wire, whatever you have, and just relocate this out of the way so that it doesn't interfere when you're working. Okay. All right, now we're going to take this bracket off right here. The bolts in the back, they were 18 millimeter. Now if you have an air gun, obviously you can use it, but I know a lot of you guys who are working in your driveway or your garage at home, you don't. So I'm not going to use an air gun here. I'm going to do it by hand also. It is an 18 millimeter. Excuse my back, but I'm going to reach under. Once you break them loose, they pretty much come out pretty easy. Again, don't lose these bolts because you are going to need to reuse these. Okay, and that's our mounting bracket. And we said about these slide pins, they slide nice and easy. Same thing here. Now this one we are going to correct. It looks like maybe the last person that did it didn't put that boot back on up to the top right here where it's supposed to be, so we will take care of that. If these are in bad shape, you can just get this hardware kit and replace just these pins, the pin boots right here. So we'll put this on the side for now and we will come back to it. Now, the rotor itself, this rotor just pulls right off the car. Unfortunately, you can see that this is extremely rusty. So the choices you have is that one, you can get underneath here with a hammer and beat the daylights out of it and it comes right off. Or you can even hit it in the face right here and it'll pop right off on this side over here. So let me just turn the alarm off because I know it's going to start ringing like crazy. And we're going to do it. Ready? Here we go. Right off. Don't be afraid of hitting it. You're not going to damage it. And as you can see, the back of this rotor is just as bad as the front of the rotor. So, all right, so you can see here it must have been making noise also. All right. Next thing we're going to do is you see this face of the the hub right here. The face of the hub has got to be cleaned off on here. Now, there's different ways of cleaning it off. One, you can take a razor like this, and you can clean it off like this, which is it's okay as long as you can get all that rust off. Okay? If that don't work, you can use a scraper to make sure you scrape off all the rust. Or I know I just told you I was not going to use air-powered stuff to do this, but I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use my disc here to clean this all up really good before I put that rotor back on. So let me clean this all up here, and once it's clean, I'll come back and we'll continue. Okay, now that we have everything all cleaned up, we're going to take our rotor and the rotor itself comes with an oily film over the top of it, so you need to clean this film off before you put it back on. The way you do that is you just get yourself some brake cleaner. Try to do this in front of you. Spray it down just a little bit. And you just take a rag and you wipe it off. And it gets off most of the film that's on there. It won't get everything off, but that's okay. All right? Take your rotor, put your rotor back on the car. Now, some of these cars here, these rotors here originally were riveted onto this car. Now, once you take the rotors off the original time, you drill those rotor rivets out and you do not put them back on. But now when you try to work, you see how this is all loose? Best thing to do is take a lug nut, screw a lug nut onto it, and screw it down as far as you can, and it'll hold the rotor stationary so you're able to work without the rotor bouncing around and falling off and causing you to get frustrated. All right, so screw the nut on. And that holds your rotor in place while you're going to work. Now, remember we talked about the hardware. If you don't get a caliper, if you don't get a brake kit that comes with the hardware kit, order it, put it on. Very, 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 very important part of every brake job is the caliper hardware, because the brake pads themselves have to fit in here like this, and they have to slide back and forth nice and freely. If this binds up for any reason, you're going to wind up with this brake pad staying applied, and you're going to prematurely burn out the brake pad. So we're going to put this back on now. I'm going to also show you how to change in here. This is the rattle clip here. We're going to replace that also. So all right, first thing we're going to do is let's do the caliper itself. We're going to change the hardware on the caliper. All right, and the way you do that is you just push these pieces here off with a screwdriver, pry bar, whatever you have. You just push them off. Same thing on this side here, like this, right? Now, you're looking inside here. If there is a significant amount of rust inside here, you'll need to get in here with the file with the screwdriver, whatever you have to clean that rust off. That's not the case here. These are actually in really decent condition considering how rusty it is. All right, so what we do is you take a little bit of your synthetic grease, you put it on here where your hardware is going to go, just like that. And you take your hardware, match it up against the old one that you just took out to make sure it's the same. You put it on the top of the brake caliper like this, and it pushes right in like that. Make sure it's centered over the opening so that your brake pad or rotor doesn't touch right here. Same thing on this one here. You put it on like this. It just pushes over the top. Again, make sure it's centered over the top of the opening right here. And what we're going to do is take your slide pins out. We're going to spray it down with some cleaning solution. And we're going to wipe off any of that grease that's on there. Right? Then you take a little bit of your synthetic grease, you put it on your pin, and you put it right back into the opening. And remember what I said about that boot not being on correctly? You want to make sure you push this up so that the boot actually pops up over the top where it's supposed to be, just like this. And you'll see now that this slides nice and freely. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on this side right here. Take it out. We're going to spray it off. Wipe off all of that old grease that's on there. We're going to lubricate the new pin like this. Put it back in the caliper. Make sure it slides nice and freely. And then make sure it pushes up and that boot pops over the top like that. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to put the synthetic grease everywhere that the brake pad is going to touch. You're going to grease it, just like that. All right, now normally I would put the brake pads in here on the bench before I put this on, but this one slides on so easy, I'm not going to do that. We'll put the brake pads in once we have it in the car. So, all right, let's put this back on the car, and we're going to continue. But first, we're going to change our gloves. That's the good thing about wearing gloves. You take them off, throw them away, put a new pair on, and your hands are nice and clean again, ready to go. Okay, so we're going to take our mounting bracket, and we're going to reattach it onto the car over the top like this. And then you screw the bolts in by hand. Now before you tighten up the one bolt, make sure you have both of them caught. Otherwise it's going to be off just a little bit and you're going to have a problem trying to tighten it up. Alright, so you screw both of them in as far as you can by hand. We're going to grab our 18mm socket and we're going to tighten the bolts up now. Tight. Same thing here. Sorry about blocking you, but I can't see back there. Alright, nice and tight here. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our brake pad and just lay it in where it's supposed to be like this. And like this. Now I know there's only one way the brake pad goes on. You can see how the brake pad is rounded like this. Make sure when you put the brake pad on, you don't put it on like this. You put it on rounded the way that the rotor itself is. And these little pieces right here, when you put this this hardware kit into the caliper itself, this is what keeps the brake pad in place and keeps it from rattling around. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to change this. It's fairly easy to do. Basically, you're just going to take the caliper, push this off, and put the new one back on. But let me show you how that goes. I hope I can show you this. Up underneath here, you'll see the little tab right here. You just push this off, just like that, and this pops off. Very easy. Now, put the new one back on, you just put it over the top, line it up, and you push it in place like that. Now, what I normally do, every place that the brake pad is going to touch, I usually put a very light film of that synthetic grease on there, just like this. In the back over here also. And I also put a little bit of grease up on top of the brake pad where it's going to slide up against the anti-rattle clip, like that. And now we push this over the top, slide it down. You may have to push these slide pins in just enough to slide the rotor. Oh, I missed to slide the caliper over the top. And we're going to catch one bolt on the bottom first. Okay, after you have that one caught, now you're going to notice that there's a little bit of pressure on this. When you push this down, you feel it pulling back up. That's the anti-rattle clip that's actually holding these brake pads down. Okay, once you've got both of them tight, caught, then you can tighten it up by hand. I will point out one more thing to you in just a moment. Nice and tight. And nice and tight. You can see why I like to use that swivel ratchet. It saves me a little bit of playing around. Now, what I want to point out, I'll take these off. What I want to point out to you is this. You see up in the top right here, let's get a light up here so you can see. You see up in the top right here where this is going to be rough to do. I need 3 hands to do this, so up the top right here, you see where this is like a nut shape right here. Make sure that these high points here are not touching into the mounting part of the caliper itself, because it'll cause the bolt hole to not line up properly. So make sure the flat part is against the flat part, as you see right here. Okay? All right, so let's recap exactly what we did and how we got this job done. Okay, we put the new rotor on. We cleaned up the surface underneath here where the rotor mounts onto. Now, as much as you may think you don't need to clean that up, believe me, you have to clean that up. I've done it already back in the early days when I didn't clean this up. Did 4 brakes all the way around, made sure the rotors were machined properly, put them on, and they pulsated. So make sure that is clean underneath there. Very important. We lubricated everywhere that the brake pad is going to touch, here as well as here. We lubricated the slide pins here and here, made sure that that little boot right there was pushed up where it's supposed to be, which is right up on the top. We made sure that the mounting bracket down here, that 18 millimeter and this 18 millimeter over here are tight. We tightened up those 13 millimeters that hold the caliper to the mounting bracket there and there, and that's it. We're all done. After we got this all wrapped up and we have everything put back together, we're going to go around to the other side and we're going to do the exact same procedure on the other side. Now, I will point this out to you. Before you drive the car, make sure that you get in the car and you pump the brake pedal up so that your pedal comes back up on top, because you will need to reseat these pistons back up against the new brake pads. They will have to push back out just that little bit in order to get that brake pedal up to the top where it's supposed to be. So, all right, let's do the other side, take this out for a ride, and I'm sure that this car is going to be perfect. So, as always, thanks for watching. Any questions or comments, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody about anything. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks again.